All right, good morning. I gotta say, I've never had to follow a drum line before. I feel like the White Walkers are about to approach or something. I'm actually really excited to be here, and let me just make sure my clicker works. There we go. I'm really excited to be here. As it was mentioned, my name's Travis. I am a founder of an organization called Ischool Initiative in SLED. We started in Georgia. Other fun fact about myself, I have 2 kids as well. I have a 3.5-year-old girl and a 1-year-old boy. And if I've learned anything today, it is that I hope my kids get a chance to be students at Anaheim Elementary School District. You know, a lot of what we talk about is culture, right? And having energy and passion for what we do. And I've seen such an amazing amount of passion working with your administrators over the past few months and seeing all of you here today. But I want to talk about some really important stuff today and get us thinking a little bit differently about education. And I want to start by asking a very simple question, and that is, why do we go to school? We come here every day, we go to these school buildings. Do we ever stop to ask ourselves, why? And what I want you to do for 10 seconds, I want to tell you to tell the person next to you, why do we go to school? Go ahead. All right, let's bring it back in. Someone over here, nice and loud. Why do we go to school? What do we say? Because my parents make me. It's the law. Why else do we go to school? To play music. Yes. Why else do we go to school? Recess. What's that? To see our friends. Yes, right here. What about to learn? Did anyone say that? Maybe a couple of us. So here's the thing. I think this is one of the most important questions we can ask ourselves, but we don't always take that time. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit later. The second thing I want to ask is, are we preparing our students for the real world, the world that they are headed for and participating? Are we preparing them? And what I want you to do this morning, I want you to walk in my shoes. I want you to go on a journey with me. And to start that journey, I want to show you some of the technology that already existed before I was even born. 1989, the original Game Boy was released. Does anyone, if you own one of these still, they're worth like $1,000 on eBay. The first cell phone in 1984 priced at $4,000. My journey began in 1991. And during the first decade of my life, technology shaped who I am today. And just to tell you a little bit about that technology, by the time I was 12 years old, I loved to play video games. Does anyone here like to play video games? A couple of us, okay. Does anyone here have a spouse who plays too many? Couple of us. What about kids who play video games? Yeah. So here's the thing. I specifically love to play the MMORPG games. This stands for Multi-Massive Online Role-Playing Games. These are the video games where you're playing with millions of other online players all over the world. Ischool Initiative was not the first company I created, the first business. When I was 12, I played this game called Star Wars Galaxies online. And after playing this game for about a year and a half, I became one of the wealthiest people on my server with this fake company I created, and I had 30 and 40-year-olds working for that fake company. Everything I learned in this video game, I'm applying to my life today. Now, that's what I just said is kind of scary, right? I was 12 playing this business, this video game with a bunch of adults, and I just want to share a side story with you really quick. You know, my parents, they didn't do everything right, but I think something they did really well was I'm one of 4 kids, and my parents play video games. Why? Because we play video games. They wanted to be a part of my world. And so much to the fact that we were able to have an open dialogue with my parents, right? When I wanted to start this business and I wanted to play this game with 30 and 40-year-olds, I went and had a conversation with my mom. And my mom looked at me and she said, okay, I'll let you play with them on one condition. You have to have them invite me to the group as well. So uncool. But I see why she did that, right? She wanted to be a part of my world. I understand that now. So, if you remember anything I said today, remember this: play video games with your children. And then I turned 16 and I dove into the world of social media. Now, not only could I explore the world around me, but I had a voice. For absolutely free, I could share a message with the entire world. This is a very powerful tool, but I think sometimes our youth don't even realize just how powerful it is that they have at their fingertips. We're going to talk about that. And then a year later, I received my first smartphone, and I did everything on this device: take notes, read books, graphing calculators, you name it. But I quickly noticed the huge divide between what I experienced in my real world and what I experienced in my educational environment. And to tell you my story, why I ended up here in front of all of you today was a very pivotal moment my senior year of high school in Georgia. I decided in a history class that I wanted to take notes using my smartphone that day. The policy in my school, though, was no cell phones allowed. And so my teacher confiscated my device, gave it to my principal. Principal called my parents. I was in trouble that day. I went home frustrated. I went home and asked the question, why? And could there be a better or different way? So I did what most kids do. I complained to my parents. Eventually, my dad said, shut up. If you don't like education, do something about it. Where so often many parents might have said, hey, you need to listen, to the adults, you need to do this or that. My parents encouraged me not to be a complainer, but to go out and have a voice and solve the problems I saw around me. And so I spent 4 months doing the only thing I know how to do. I created a YouTube video. And this video was all about one-to-one mobile learning. Imagine if every student had an iPod Touch. What could you do, right? This was before iPads and things like that. And this video kind of went viral all of a sudden that year as a high school student. Steve Jobs found the video, started promoting it through Apple Education. And I accidentally fell into this space of education technology. Been stuck here since. And it was a year later that I went to college at Kennesaw State University, and I created the Ischool Initiative. Now, the Ischool Initiative, at our core, we are a movement to completely reimagine what learning looks like in the classroom. But above all else, our mission is to develop students who can solve problems that technology can't. Now, here's what I mean by that. Artificial intelligence and all the technology we see around us, it was invented to do one specific thing: solve problems for us. And it has gotten really good at solving problems. And the thing is, if we continue to develop students to try and get them to compete against this technology, we will lose. Technology is fantastic at memorizing information. It's great at repetitive tasks. So the question our organization asks is, what makes us unique as humans? How do we invest in human intelligence, and how do we invest in creating those skill sets in our learners so that when they go to the workforce, they will always have a job? So our mission is to build that human intelligence in every one of our students across the country. Now, to break this down, I want to talk about what we have seen happen over the course of human history. For most of the humans past, I want to talk about the skill sets that we need. And for most of the past, the professions you saw were things like farmers, warriors, hunters, and so on. And the thing you needed to survive was physical labor. Your ability to physically do something was dependent on your survivability, right? And then we moved into the industrial age, where we started creating machines to do a lot of the physical labor for us. And we started creating professions like lawyers, doctors, teachers. And the thing you needed to be successful in the world was knowledge. In fact, we have a saying: knowledge is power. So here's the thing. As we move to the future, I believe, in my opinion, that knowledge alone will not equal power. It used to be that knowledge was the equalizer. It was the thing that could get you out of poverty if you could only have access to a great education and have access to that knowledge. But because of the information age, the value of knowledge, the value of facts and information is readily available at anyone's fingertips. And the thing that will make you successful in this world is not knowledge alone. It takes more than that. So let's just talk about what's going on in the world around us. Let's talk about the future. Let's talk about the construction industry. 3D printing is changing everything. This building on the left is an apartment building in Japan, entirely built using a 3D printer. The bridge, there's a 3D printer printing a bridge across the water in that right image. The way we create and design and build homes is totally changing. My 3-year-old, when she's ready to design her dream home and buy it, she's going to design something totally custom in a software, click the print button, and be done, right? Let's talk about other industries. The energy industry, Tesla Motors with their 35,000 electric car, Solar City Roofing providing tiles that look like regular roofing but power your whole house. The way we create and consume energy, totally changing. Travel. Travel has never before been so easy. The largest hotel chain, Airbnb, owns no properties. The largest taxi service, Uber, owns no cars. The way we get around is quickly changing. We're moving into this gig economy where everyone has to work for themselves at some level in the job force right now. Agriculture. Grasshopper protein powder is predicted to be one of the #1 consumptions of protein over the next 20 years or so. Why? Because it's a whole lot cheaper to produce than beef. I read an article the other day that said something along the lines of, we need to produce 60% more food than we produce today over the next 20 years or so to keep up. Those are problems that need solving. And last, artificial intelligence. Where machines went after the industrial age jobs, artificial intelligence is going after the service jobs in a lot of ways. Anything that is based on information or facts can and will be replaced by technology. IBM Watson gives legal advice that is 90% accurate, compared to a fresh out of law school student, 70% accurate. We have to ask ourselves, how do we prepare students to be successful in the workforce, seeing what's on the horizon and see what's going on in the workforce today? I believe the thing we need in its simplest form to be successful in that workforce is the ability to solve problems. If you can continue to be a problem solver, you will always have a place in whatever it is you do. In your own professions, if you are actively solving problems every single day, then you will continue to have a job with what you do. But I want to break this down even further and talk about the 7 skills that are needed for the future. This was a Harvard study done by Tony, and he worked with companies to break this down, and here's what his findings had. Number 1, critical thinking and problem solving right off the bat. Number 2, collaboration across networks. Number 3, agility and adaptability. Number 4, initiative and entrepreneurship. Number 5, effective oral and written communication. Number 6, assessing and analyzing information. Number 7, curiosity and imagination. These were the 7 skills that we needed to be successful in today's workforce. As we think about education, how are we building these every single day with our students? And what I want to do is I want to have a quick discussion with you all. I know we've got a nice big crowd here, but I want to ask you guys a question and someone to give me an argument either way. Are kids today getting worse or better at creative problem solving? When it is more needed than ever before, are we getting worse or better? Does someone in this general area just want to stand up nice and loud and give me an argument one way or the other? We getting worse or better? Worse. Why? They don't think for themselves. What's that about Google? They just Google it, okay? Worse or better? They don't know how to engage, so maybe we're getting worse there. What else? Somebody tell me, worse or better? Worse, why? They can't focus. Let's go to this side of the room. Worse, why? We're going to talk about that. What else we got? Worse or better? Nice and loud. Worse because we have to teach them a growth mindset. So often they don't have a growth mindset right now. Yes. Better, yes, and why? Okay, so they're designing all sorts of amazing things. They're solving problems creatively, so we're getting better. Anyone else in this back section here? One more person want to give me an argument? Nice and loud in the back. They're getting better because they have access to more resources to solve problems. So here's the thing. I think this is a very broad question. I think that if you think about this question, are we getting better at problem solving in Minecraft? Right? Are we getting better at problem solving in our classroom, our educational setting? Maybe not. For the sake of today's argument, I want to make the case that we are actually declining in our ability to be problem solvers when it is more important than ever. Now, let's go through some stuff here. This is a graph. And this graph represents the average IQ of Americans over the last 40 years. And what are you noticing? It's going up. In fact, it's going up at a consistent rate. This is called the Flint Effect. It basically means we are consistently getting smarter. Great news, right? But when you compare this to other tests like the CQ, the Creative Quotient Test, or Torrance Test, you see a different trend start to emerge. We were on the incline, and then in 1990, something happened, and we started going on the decline. What happened in the 90s? Technology, the internet. And the internet was invented to solve problems. And it did a dang good job of it, right? And so I want to share with you 5 reasons that I believe we are declining in our ability to problem solve and what we can do about it all across the board in K-12 education. Let's start with number 1. I'm actually going to take this outside the realm of education. And I'm going to talk about a very big cultural shift that is holding us back right now. Helicopter parenting. It's known as snowplow parenting now. As educators, maybe you felt this way, right? 1969, the parents are yelling at the child, explain these bad grades. Really not healthy to do that, besides the point. 2009, explain these bad grades. The parents are yelling at the teacher now. How many of you feel like this sometimes? Yeah. So here's the thing. There's been a huge cultural shift where our parents are doing far more for their kids than they've ever done before. And you want to know, I have a phobia. My phobia is parents with too much free time. Because usually what that means is that they do far too much for their kids. We coddle our kids. Even for me, my own kids, I see this in the toy and the baby industry all around me. There are so many toys that do one thing. There's this cool STEM toy that does this one thing really, really well. You want to know my 3-year-old's favorite toy still? The box it came in. Because a box can be whatever she wants it to be, right? She can use her imagination, her curiosity, and make it what she wants it to be. And I feel like I just have to bring Morpheus into this conversation. What if I told you parents are not supposed to protect their children from the world, but to prepare them for it? We rob our students of their independence so often, and it's little things we don't always realize. Let me give you an idea about my own personal experience with this. My parents taught me how to tie my shoes. How many of us taught our kids how to tie our shoes, right? Probably most of us. So here's the thing. I've recently discovered that my parents taught me the wrong way to tie my shoes. I do the whole 2-bunny method, and it comes undone. It takes me longer. I waste 5 seconds of my life every day for the rest of my life because of this. I'm not resentful, just a little. So here's the thing. There's 3 levels of helicopter parenting that I think about. The worst level is what I call Velcro shoes till they're 18 years old, right? And then we move somewhere down the middle, which is I'm going to teach my kids what I know. And here's the limiting factors of this. I think as parents, our goal is that we want our kids to exceed us in life. We want them to do better. But if we keep teaching them only what we know, we hold them back from having that growth mindset of learning new ideas. Simple example of this. This little girl's watching her mother fry a fish in a pan. And the mother, every time, cuts the head off the fish. And the daughter finally says, "Hey, Mom, why do you cut the head off every time?" And the mom goes, "I don't know. My mom always cut the head off." So she called her mom. "Hey, Mom, why do you always cut the head off?" The mother said, I don't know, my mom always used to do it. So then she calls her grandma. Hey, grandma, why did you always cut the head off before frying your fish? And the grandma says, well, because the fish wouldn't fit in the pan. And thinking about this, what this does is it passes down information that may not always be the best information, but it's conditioning our kids when we don't even realize it sometimes, and we do these things without even being aware of it. And so the deeper level of parenting that I'm talking about looks something like this. Your 6-year-old has their shoes untied, you look at them and you go, wow, that's gonna really hurt when you fall on those. You should probably do something about it. And a 6-year-old can go, hey Siri, how do I tie my shoes? And here's the beautiful part about this. They can re-listen 100 times to figure it out. They don't need to keep asking you every time, right? But here's why this is so powerful, in my opinion. That 6-year-old had an epiphany in that moment, that their learning was not dependent on any adult in the room. They did not need mom or dad to survive. They did not need mom or dad to figure out and solve their own problems. That is extremely powerful. That is the value of living in the information age. We can solve our problems very efficiently if we allow them to find their own solutions. I cannot tell you how many of my peers dropped out freshman year of college, not because they couldn't get grades, they were making straight A's, but they could not cope with the emotional trauma of living on their own and having roommates. Couldn't deal with it without mom or dad there. So we've got to think about how we build our society and move past this culture that we've seen stemming. Number 2, students do not know how to use technology. They know how to use it for YouTube, Facebook, video games, etc., but they don't always know how to use it as a productive device. Now, I give you this comparison. Let's say I go to a group of middle school boys, and I give them a graphing calculator for the first time. I guarantee you they're not going to go to the back of the room and start solving complex math equations on their own, but they will quickly find out how to type boobies upside down. Just like the calculator, we cannot assume our kids know how to use technology productively. We cannot have that assumption walking into a classroom. Number 3, we are a generation of great test takers. I'm phenomenal at memorizing information, taking a test, and forgetting it the next day. I'm great at that. And when you take that away from me, I don't like you, right? Because I know how the system works. I am very good at working that system. And to give you an example of this, a couple years ago, I was taking a college course with this professor who I absolutely loved. This professor had no multiple choice tests at the end of the semester. He challenged you to get uncomfortable. He asked you really great questions. I started asking my peers what they thought of this teacher, though, and I realized I was the only one who liked this teacher. So I did some research on a very academic website called Rate My Professor. And for those of you who don't know, this is a website that 99% of college students have been using to evaluate teachers so other students can determine if it's a good teacher or not. Are anyone here used Rate My Professor? Okay, case in point. So here's the thing. Our customers dictate our behaviors in industries. Let's find out, this site that 99% of people are using, let's find out what the criteria for this site is. This is my professor score. I'll call him Professor Bob. He had one of the lowest scores I've seen on this website. There are 3 criteria to this website. The bottom one, easiness. The easier you are, the better teacher you are, of course. 2, clarity. The more clear instructions I give you to get the A, the better teacher you are. And number 3, helpfulness. Another word for easy. These are the 3 criterias to this website. There's a bonus criteria. Does anyone know what the chili pepper means? Your hotness. Apparently, your attractiveness also affects your ability to be a good teacher, right? I can attest that my teacher did not earn a chili pepper. So if that wasn't enough, I want to read to you 3 quotes from the review section of why students said it was a bad teacher. Number 1, do not take this teacher if you value your time and like to know expectations. This teacher will say he's not going to teach you. It is true, he won't teach you anything. You must teach yourself. Number 2, not worth it, not what it seems. Well, I learned a lot about teamwork, business, etc. However, none of this learning took place inside the classroom. And my favorite one, doesn't actually teach it all, but makes you use what you've learned so far in school to do it yourself. If you were reading these comments, you would have assumed they were positive reviews about the teacher. And yet these are the reasons that our students don't like this teacher. So here's the reality I think we live in. We can talk about innovating our craft. We can talk about getting out of our comfort zone and doing things differently as educators. But at the end of the day, if our customers don't want it, what's going to happen? We're going to leave. Great teachers are going to leave and go somewhere where they feel appreciated. As long as our mentality is developed, even at a very young age, as long as our mentality is developed as what is the bare minimum I can do to get the A, we cannot teach in these innovative ways. And I don't necessarily blame students for having this mentality. Ever since elementary school, whenever I asked an adult, why do I have to go to school? I was always told the same thing. You go to school to get good grades, to get into a good college, to get a good job. That's why you go. And then we wonder why our kids do exactly what we've just told them and seek the path of least resistance to get the A. We have a branding problem in education. What if the idea of school wasn't what it is today? What if school was branded as a safe place to solve problems? And what I mean by that is an environment where it's okay to fail. It's okay to experiment. It's a safe place to go out there, get uncomfortable while you solve problems in the world around you. As a teacher, would you enjoy teaching more? And as a student, would you enjoy going to school more? Number 4, lack of skill in find, filter, and apply. I believe an essential skill that our kids need is the ability to find accurate information and create something beautiful out of that information. We live in a time and an era where it's all at our fingertips. But if we don't know what or how to use this tool effectively, it's going to be a struggle. I want to try something which probably won't work with this many phones in the room, but this half of let's say this half right here, I want you to go to Google on your phone, and maybe it loads for some of you, maybe it doesn't. I want you to Google, are cats better than dogs? Okay? This half over here. I want you to Google, are dogs better than cats? Take 30 seconds, click on the first link, right, and tell me what you find. Which are better? Ten more seconds. This will work at least if like 10 of you get through on the internet. All right, nice and loud for my group over here. Are cats better than dogs? Cats are better? Based on what you searched, not what you think. Over here, what did our Google search find? Are dogs better or are cats better? Dogs! The way we Google things, there's bias in them. We cannot tap into the collective wisdom that is the internet if we don't learn how to use our search tools properly. The only difference in what we Googled was the order of operations, cats first or dogs first, and yet that's how it dictates what's going to come up. We have to think about the skill of find, filter, and apply. Let me give you a story about this. My little brother loves to play Minecraft. And I'm going to get on my Minecraft soapbox for a second. It is single-handedly one of the best educational tools I've seen, right? Because its only limitation is the creativity of my own mind. What I love about this game above all else, though, is watching adults attempt to play it. Because usually they hate it. Maybe this is your experience. Your 9-year-old won't stop talking about Minecraft. They finally sit you in this weird block-shaped world in a game that looks like it was built 30 years ago. And as you sit down to play with your kid, the first thing you ask your child, what do I do? And that is the beauty of this game. There's no linear path to success. You create your own destiny. This is why I believe kids are obsessed with it. This is why I think it's had the success it's had. It's a sandbox game. Now here's the thing. Every time my little brother runs into a problem in Minecraft, what do you think he immediately does when he runs into a problem? He goes to YouTube. He watches more videos about the game than actually playing the game. Your kids do this too. There are over 2.7 million channels dedicated to Minecraft. One channel had 5.5 million subscribers and 2.3 billion views. Every time he got stuck, he solved his problems. That same day he had math homework that he didn't know how to do. He did what most kids do. He went to my parents for help. My parents looked at it and said, I have no clue how to do this math. And so what did he do? He said, oh, I guess I can't learn today. Gave up. Never thought to go to Khan Academy, which only has one channel, 2 million subscribers, and 500 million views. He knew how to do it, but he didn't do it in his educational setting. Why? And how are we teaching, inspiring, and role modeling our students to be experts at find, filter, and apply, not just in their personal lives, but in their educational careers as well? We have to think about these skills and developing with our students. And number 5, the biggest reason that holds us back, in my opinion. The questions we've asked have not really changed. Who is the 15th president of the United States? Does anyone know the answer? I heard a couple people, James Buchanan. So out of 2,500, 5 of us would have aced the test. So here's the thing. If I asked you this question 30 years ago, how would you solve it? You mean you had to go to a library and talk to a real human being? And then you had to go look it up in this book, in this encyclopedia, just to find a simple answer like that? Think about this. Going back to those 7 skill sets, by asking this question, you were developing your oral communication. You were developing assessing information by asking this simple question. How do we solve it today? What problem-solving skills did you learn along the way? Probably not a whole lot. So here's the thing. I think that the value of asking this question 30 years ago was not so that we would remember who the 15th president was. Most of us in this room didn't remember. The value was the problem solving we were learning along the way that we got out of this. Let me give you another example. Traveling from point A to B, how the heck did you do it 30 years ago? What is Thomas Guide? I've had a GPS since I was 15. But think about this, planning your family trip to Disney or somewhere farther for you guys, planning your family vacation was an endeavor. You had to assess information using a map, right? This is gonna blow your mind. You didn't know where traffic was gonna be that day, right? And if you went down a wrong turn, you had to problem solve to figure your way back on course. And it tested your oral communication ability, probably leading to some marriage counseling. Simply planning your family vacation, you were growing as a problem solver. So here's the dilemma that I think we live in. Technology is outpacing us in a lot of ways when it comes to how effective it is at solving problems. And so the things we used to do no longer develop those things that we are so desperately in need of, even more today than in the past. Now, many people would say the solution is so simple. Let's ban the technology. Let's force our kid to use a map to get to school, right? They won't make it, but problem solving. But I think there's a better way, because the reality we live in is that they're going to have access to that technology in the workforce and for the rest of our lives. And so we have to figure out, how can we push the boundaries and develop problem solvers knowing the technology exists like it does today? And I want to talk about how we're going to do that. And of course, how do we solve this today? GPS. And we go on autopilot, right? Our brains totally shut off. If that GPS says make a left off the next cliff over here, I'm going off the cliff. So we've got to think about the questions we ask in education to build problem solvers. I want to shift gears here, and I want to talk just a little bit about how our movement has been pushing this initiative to challenge teachers and administrators to get uncomfortable. In 2012, we wanted to change education as we knew it as a team. And so we raised $150,000. We rented this bus for 45 days, and 9 guys and 1 girl lived in this bus for 45 days that summer in 2012. We started in Georgia, went all the way to California, up to New York, and back to Georgia again, sharing our message with anyone who would listen to us. We presented in 21 cities over 45 days. And by the way, just a side note, if you ever want to accomplish something really big, the easiest way to do that is we had $0 in the bank, and we just signed a legal contract saying we'd pay the $150,000. Eventually, we figured it out, right? So, watching this experience, though, we learned 2 things about our journey doing this. Number 1, living in a bus is a dumb idea. And number 2, 45 days is not enough to change education. And so we launched a new tour bus, and we call this the Mobile Classroom. It opens up to about twice its size, and it's year-round going to school districts all over the country. And the best way I can explain this is, imagine if Optimus Prime and the Magic School Bus have a baby. And so it's full of technology, and what we do is we go to schools to have that growth mindset, to really inspire action and inspire a different way of thinking about learning. And the way we do this is we created it as what we call our Escape the Bus. How many of us have done an escape room before? How many of us successfully escaped? Good bit of us. So here's the thing. For those of you who don't know, escape rooms are these team-building exercises where you lock a small group of people inside a room and you give them 1 hour to problem solve and see if they have what it takes to escape. Only like 30% of teams do it. It's a whole lot of fun if you haven't done one. And we realized that escape rooms have perfected a lot of education. Now, I'm not suggesting that we shove a bunch of kids in a closet and hope for the best. But what I am suggesting is a very simple principle, this idea of be less helpful. Be less helpful. It is our belief that we spoon-feed way too much to our kids and have them regurgitate it the following day, right? And that's not how we build problem solvers. And let me give you a simple example of what I mean by this. With our Escape the Bus, we locked 12 teachers, administrators, students inside, and they have 30 minutes to use technology to see if they have what it takes to escape. And then we do a 20-minute debrief afterwards about what we just experienced. Now, I want you to imagine you're in our bus, you're walking around, you have no idea what to do, you're frustrated, but you're trying to figure it out, and eventually you find a code that leads to this, that leads to that, and you click open this lock, it goes, clicks open. How do you feel in that moment that lock clicks open? Woo! You're like screaming, running around, high-fiving each other, right? Super excited, super hype. Now, if I instead went up to the whiteboard in our bus and I said, hey guys, here are the 3 steps to open that box. Step 1, find the journal. Step 2, go to the box. Step 3, open that box. How would you feel in the moment you clicked it open? You accomplished a series of tasks. Essentially, we rob our students of the enjoyment of learning when we give them too much information. It is the journey of doing the unknown, of not knowing if we're going to escape, and problem solving that creates a love and a desire and a passion to continue. That is what we want to see. So this bus has been going around. I will be in Anaheim a good bit in this area, going to some of your, working with some of you guys as well. And so we're really excited to partner with you guys on some of these initiatives. The second thing that we launched is what we call SLED, Students Leading Education. And this came out of a huge need for student voice in education. Here we are, the largest stakeholders, and yet we often have the smallest voice in education. We wanted to change that. And so we created a club, a student club, where we work with students, and we do a 3-day training. And on the second day of the training, we invite the administrators and teachers to come in and treat the students as consultants and basically pitch to them the problems that you all face. So you guys might say things like, I don't have enough time in the day to work on incorporating technology, or students are using technology inappropriately, or we don't have fresh produce on our cafeteria lunches. Whatever the problems might be, students have 24 hours to pitch a project idea on how they're going to solve that problem over the course of the entire year. And so this program is all about not talking about theory, but really encouraging young people to see what value, what problems they can solve in their local community. And my challenge to you, as you think about the rest of this school year, how are you empowering and inspiring and pushing your students to solve real-world problems in your community every single day? So going back to this idea of the questions we have asked have not changed, the final few things that I want to share with you are what I believe we must do in order to create problem solvers. First and foremost, we have to ask questions that can't be Googled. Because if all we do is ask Googleable questions, we should be replaced by Google. We have to ask more challenging, meaningful questions to our students. And I'm going to go through my tips and tricks on how to ask questions that can't be Googled very briefly. Number one, ask questions that do not have a definitive answer. Anything with a definitive answer can be immediately Googled. Think about this. 99% of our curriculum is designed around teaching the known universe. We teach what humans have already discovered. But what if 20, 30, 40% of our curriculum was designed around teaching the unknown? I'll give you a simple example of this. Does anyone here know what the Voynich manuscript is? One or two of us maybe. Voynich manuscript was a document, a 600-page document found that was written hundreds of years ago in a language that no one has ever seen before. Some of the brightest people have come together trying to translate the Voynich manuscript. What if today's lesson was, all right, kids, we're going to try and translate the Voynich manuscript. Go. What kind of questions would your kids ask? What would they want to start? They'd start thinking about what are the commonalities between languages? How did two languages even start to talk to each other from the very beginning? And are they actually going to translate it by the end of the class? Maybe, right? That's the idea. How can we give real problems that haven't been discovered, that have no definitive answer? Number two, use your local surroundings as part of the question. Any question in your textbook is by default a very Googleable question, because there are millions of other people using that textbook as well. And so anytime you can localize your learning, it makes it that much harder to create problem solving. I'll give you an example of this. If I ask my kids to dissect a Van Gogh painting and say, what was the painter thinking when he made this art piece? There are millions of experts who have done that, who have gone through that process and analyzed it. I could go Google, take their opinion, call it my own. Because here's the thing, when you ask young people opinionated questions, like tell me your opinion on this, most young people don't have a lot of opinions on things yet. Either because they haven't had experienced life enough, or because they've been conditioned not to have an opinion on things. And so often they Google other people's opinions, they call it their own. So to localize it would look something like this. It would be, have each person make their own painting, exchange it with a partner, then ask the question, what was the person thinking when they painted this? So anytime you can use your local environment, it might be more effective. Another simple example, how many tennis balls would it take to fill up the stadium we're in today? That's all you ask your kids, right? They have to figure out, does the height matter? Does this stage matter? What matters is half the battle of problem solving. So let them figure out the variables, let them work through it, use your local surroundings. Number three, give an answer and ask what the question is. A terrible question we ask in elementary, what is 2 plus 2? There are two outcomes to this question. What are they? You're right or wrong. Either you were right and you weren't being challenged, or you're wrong and you feel incompetent out of this question. What if we said the answer is 4? What's the question? Now, if I'm new at math, I might say 2 plus 2. If I'm advanced at math, I might say something totally different. Now, this sounds nice in theory, but if I go to a group of high school students and I say the answer's 4, what's the problem? What are 99% of them going to tell me? What's 2 plus 2? Why? Because it's the path of least resistance. If my mentality is to do the bare minimum to get the A, then that's all I'll do. I share this with you to say that we have to work on changing this culture if we're going to ask questions like this. Number 4, create project-based learning. We talk about PBLs all the time. I think they're a fantastic way of incorporating questions that can't be Googled. Number 5, ask questions you want to know the answer to as well. Chances are, if you want to know, your kids will want to know. I'm going to give you a challenge that may make you feel uncomfortable, but I want you to just try it. I want you to teach a lesson to your kids on something you know nothing about. And I don't want you to research it the night before. I want you to observe how you teach it and how your students respond to it. It could go really, really poorly, but I want you to just try it out and see what happens, right? Because this will force you to be less helpful because you don't even have the answer, right? You're going down this journey with your students. A teacher once told me, she said, I am sick and tired of going home sick and tired and exhausted while my kids just coast by. I want them to be exhausted and I want to be refreshed by the end of the day, right? So number 5, ask questions you want to know the answer to as well. The last one, create value to society. Create value to society. I think this is the ultimate test of, are we building problem solvers? And what I mean by this is not just asking questions to our kids, but encouraging them to go out and do real problems that need solving, right? A simple example of this, if I ask a question, how do you solve hunger? Is that Googleable? Yes, right? It's a very Googleable question. I can actually Google and find the 10 most efficient ways of solving hunger. But if I remove the first 3 words of that question, what does it become? Solve hunger. And so the thing I want us to think about is if we can encourage problem solving, Google cannot take the action for you. All it can do is provide the information and the resources to get there. So these are tips and tricks on how to ask questions that can't Googled. And last, these are tips on how to deliver those questions. We've already gone over most of these. Number 1, be less helpful. Number 2, ask the shortest question possible. Number 3, encourage peer-to-peer coaching. In our bus, we have 3 lifelines. And anytime you get stuck or frustrated, as a team, you can use a lifeline and get help. And as you ask for help, what do you think the purpose of that lifeline is, right? There's a fine line of frustration that leads to giving up and frustration that leads to growth. And so a teacher took this concept, it was a 4th grade teacher. She created 3 lifelines for her classroom. And she basically told her kids, you can only ask me 3 questions the entire day as a class. So as soon as a student went up to you, the teacher, to ask a question, what do you think happened? A million students ran up and said, no, wait, I'll help you with your question. And she ended the day with all 3 lifelines remaining. Why is this so powerful besides keeping your sanity as a teacher? Those students' learning was not dependent on any one individual but each other, right? Again, they have the realization that they can be problem solvers without any adult in the room. And last, allow students to identify what the problem is to begin with. Encourage them. There's a great resource out there called rightquestion.org, R-I-G-H-T, question.org, that teaches you practices for how to help students come up with the questions. So I believe we are at a time, and I just want to close out with this. As you embark on this school year, and as you think about your profession and how you want to innovate and do things differently and get uncomfortable this year, I just also want you to think about how you can encourage your students to have that excitement and that ability to find, filter, and apply information, how you can encourage them to solve real-world problems every single day, and how you can make sure that when you go home, you don't feel exhausted, your students feel exhausted, and you've gone through that journey with them. And above all else, if we can move towards building schools that becomes a safe place to solve problems every single day. Thank you so much for your time today.